First up, the Berkshire Hathaway Annual General Meeting is widely hailed as the Woodstock for capitalists.
Berkshire is back, the so-called Woodstock of capitalism.
This has got to be the Woodstock of capitalism. Everybody who's anybody in this industry shows up here.
As usual, tens of thousands of people flock to Omaha for the Berkshire Annual Meeting, sometimes known as the Woodstock for capitalism, and 2024 is no exception. For the first time, Charlie Munger was dearly missed as he had passed away, but his huge, peerless legacy remains. In this video, we select the top 10 questions ranging from investment to life lessons to Warren Buffett's relationship with Charlie Munger. To select the top 10 questions, which we edited for filler words, prolonged pauses, and claps, we went through the 2024 Berkshire Annual Meeting twice over 2 days. In this video, we start off with Warren Buffett remembering Charlie Munger, followed with the questions and answers in chronological order.
Yeah, don't wear out all your clapping on Charlie. I mean, we got Charlie. Charlie, I'm so used to I had actually checked myself a couple times already, but I'll slip again.
That's a great honor, Warren.
Question 1 on Apple sale. Warren Buffett says that unless something extraordinary happens, Berkshire will still own Apple, as it is an even better business than Amex or Coca-Cola.
There was some news that came out in the 10Q this morning. It shows that Berkshire sold another 115 million shares of Apple in this last quarter. That's Berkshire's largest holding. And I think in that vein, we'll start with a question from Sherman Lamb. He is a 27-year-old Berkshire Hathaway Class B shareholder from Malaysia. And he asks, last year you mentioned Coca-Cola and American Express being Berkshire's two long-duration partial ownership positions, and you spent some time talking about the virtues of both these wonderful businesses in your recent shareholder letter. I noticed that you have excluded Apple from this group of businesses. Have you or your investment manager's views of the economics of Apple's business or its attractiveness as an investment changed since Berkshire first invested in 2016?
No, I would. But we have sold shares, and I would say that at the end of the year, I would think it extremely likely that Apple is the largest common stock holding we have now. One interesting thing is that Charlie and I looked at common stocks or marketable equities or the things that people love to look at as being businesses. And so when we own a Dairy Queen or we own whatever it may be, we look at that as a business. And when we own Coca-Cola or American Express or Apple, we look at that as a business. Now, we can buy really wonderful companies in the market as businesses. We can't buy all of them. All of their shares. We can't buy 90% or 80% or anything like that. But when we look at Coca-Cola and American Express and Apple, we look at them as businesses. Now, there's differences in tax factors. There's difference in managerial responsibility, a whole bunch of things. But in terms of deploying your money, we always look at every stock as a business. And we have no attempt made to predict markets. We have no attempt made to pick stocks. I went through many, many years doing the wrong thing. I got interested in stocks very early, and I was fascinated by them. And I wasn't wasting my time because I was reading every book possible and everything else. But finally, I picked up a copy of The Intelligent Investor in Lincoln, and there was a few sentences in there that said much more eloquently than I can say it. But if you look at stocks as a business and treat the market as something that doesn't tell you, isn't there to instruct you, but it's there to serve you, you'll do a lot better over time than if you try to take charts and listen to people talk about moving averages and look at the Fed pronouncements and all of that sort of thing. And so that made a lot of sense to me then. And the way I've been allowed to deploy it, Charlie and I talked about this, of course, constantly. It's changed over the years as the amount of capital we have and has changed and all of that. But the basic principle was laid out by Ben Graham in that book, which I picked up for a couple of dollars, and which basically said to me, you've been wasting your time now, but maybe you can use what you've learned or been reading about and put it to better use. And then Charlie came along and told me how to put it to even better use. And that's sort of the story of why we own American Express, which is a wonderful business. We own Coca-Cola, which is a wonderful business. And we own Apple, which is an even better business. And we will own, unless something really extraordinary happens, we will own Apple and American Express and Coca-Cola when Greg takes over this place. And it's such a simple approach that it's almost deceptive. Most things, if you keep working harder and harder at it, you learn a little more math or you learn a little more physics. But investments, you don't really have to do that. You really have to have your mindset properly. So we will end up, unless something dramatically happens that really changes capital allocation strategy. We will have Apple as our largest investment, but I don't mind at all, under current conditions, building the cash position. I think when I look at the alternative of what's available in the equity markets, and I look at the composition of what's going on in the world, we find it quite attractive. And one thing that may surprise you, but almost everybody I know pays a lot more attention to not paying taxes than I think they should. We don't mind paying taxes at Berkshire, and we are paying a 21% federal rate on the gains we're taking in Apple, and that rate was 35% not that long ago, and it's been 52% in the past when I've been operating. And the federal government owns a part of the earnings of the business we make. They don't own the assets, but they own a percentage of the earnings. And they can change that percentage any year. And the percentage that they've decreed currently is 21%. And I would say with the present fiscal policies, I think that something has to give. And I think that higher taxes are quite likely, and the government wants to take a greater share of your income or mine or Berkshire's, they can do it. And they may decide that someday they don't want the fiscal deficit to be this large because that has some important consequences, and they may not want to decrease spending a lot, and they may decide they'll take a larger percentage of what we earn, and we'll pay it. And we always hope at Berkshire to pay substantial federal income taxes. We think it's appropriate that a country that's has been as generous to our owners. It's been the place. I was lucky. Berkshire was lucky it was here, and if we send in a check like we did last year, we sent in over $5 billion to the U.S. federal government. And if 800 other companies had done the same thing, no other person in the United States would have had to pay a dime of federal taxes, whether income taxes, no Social Security taxes, no estate taxes, no, it's open down the line. Now, I would like to, I hope things develop well enough with Berkshire that we say we're in the 800 club and maybe even move up a few notches. It doesn't bother me in the least to write that check. And I would really hope with all that America's done for all of you, it shouldn't bother you that we do it. And if I'm doing it at 21% this year and we're doing it at a higher percentage later on, I don't think you'll actually mind the fact that we sold a little Apple this year.
Question 2 on investing in Hong Kong or China. Warren Buffett says that Berkshire investments under him will be American-centric, as he is slow to adapt to foreign cultures. However, he did invest substantially in BYD after Charlie Munger pounded the table.
Hi, Mr. Buffett. This is Matthew Lai from China, Hong Kong. And we are so grateful that to learn from you and you really inspire us. My question is, besides the electrical car company, BYD, under what circumstances you will reinvest and reconsider to invest Hong Kong and China company? Thank you.
Yeah. Well, our primary investments will always be in the United States. We do think it. The companies we invest in the United States, American Express does business around the world, and no company hardly does business around the world like Coca-Cola. I mean, they are the preferred soft drink, in something maybe like 170 or 180 out of 200 countries. Those are rough approximations from a few years back, probably, but that degree of acceptance worldwide is, I think it's almost unmatched. I can't really think of any company that has it. American Express has a position in the credit card deal, which I think is extremely strong. And part of that was part of the reasons for that was one of the directors that I introduced a few minutes ago, Ken Chenault. But it has strengthened dramatically over the last 20 years for a lot of reasons. So we will, the BYD investment was we made the commitment in Japan, which I did 5 years ago, and that was just overwhelmingly, was compelling. It was just extraordinarily compelling, and we bought it as fast as we could, and we spent a year, and we got a few percent of our assets in 5 very big companies, but that's the problem of being our size. But you won't find us making a lot of investments outside the United States, although we're participating through these other companies in the world economy. But I understand the United States rules, weaknesses, strengths, whatever it may be. I don't have the same feeling for economies generally around the world. I don't pick up on other cultures extremely well, and the lucky thing is I don't have to, because I don't live in some tiny little country that just doesn't have a big economy. But I'm in an economy already that has, after starting out with 0.5% of the world's population, has ended up with well over 20% of the world's output in an amazingly short period of time. So we will be American oriented. If we do something really big, it's extremely likely to be in the United States. Charlie, in all those years, there's only 2 times he's told me that, this one is really you know, he would always go along with me and say, well, when I was suggesting something, he'd say, well, this is really not that great, but it's probably the best you'll come up with, so I'll go along with the idea. But Charlie twice has pounded the table with me and just said, buy. And BYD was one of them, and Costco was the other. And we bought a certain amount of Costco, and we bought quite a bit of BYD. But looking back, he already was aggressive, but I should have been more aggressive in Costco. It wasn't fatal that we weren't, but he was right big time in both companies. And I'm aware of what goes on in most markets, but I think it's unlikely that we make any large commitments in almost any country you can name, although, we don't rule it out entirely. And I feel extremely good about our Japanese position, and we'll have that, I don't know how many years. Greg will be sitting with that at some point, and we couldn't be happier with that. But we really have a different outlook in looking at we look at your money, which we couldn't bear to lose, and we feel that we're very less likely to make any truly major mistakes in the United States than in many other countries.
Question 3 on generative AI. Warren Buffett says it is a genie which cannot be put back. Whether it is a good genie or bad genie remains to be seen.
Hi, I'm Joe, visiting from San Francisco. How do you think about the role of technological advances, especially generative AI, on more traditional industries? Thank you.
I don't know anything about AI, but that doesn't mean I deny its existence or importance or anything of the sort. And last year I said, that we let a genie out of the bottle when we developed nuclear weapons, and that genie has been doing some terrible things lately. And the power of that genie scares the hell out of me. And under that, I don't know any way to get the genie back in the bottle. And AI is somewhat similar. It's part way out of the bottle, and it's enormously important, and it's going to be done by somebody. So we may wish we'd never seen that genie, or it may do wonderful things. And I'm certainly not the person that can evaluate that. And I probably wouldn't have been the person that could have evaluated it during World War II, whether we tested a 20,000-ton bomb that we felt was absolutely necessary for the United States and would actually save lives in the long run, but where we also had Edmund Teller, I think it was on a parallel with Einstein in terms of saying you may, with this test, ignite the atmosphere in such a way that civilization doesn't continue. And we decided to let the genie out of the bottle, and it accomplished the immediate objective, but whether it's going to change the future of society, we will find out later. Now, AI, I had one experience that does make me a little nervous, and I'll just explain it. That very, very recently, fairly recently, I saw an image in front of my eyes on the screen, and it was me, and it was my voice, and wearing the kind of clothes I wear, and my wife or my daughter wouldn't have been able to detect any difference, and it was delivering a message that no way came from me. So when you think of the potential for scamming people, if you can reproduce images that I can't even tell, that say, I need money, it's your daughter. I've just had a car crash, I need throw $50,000 wired. I mean, scamming has always been part of the American scene, but this would make me, if I was interested in investing in scamming, it's going to be the growth industry of all time, and it's enabled in a way. Obviously AI has potential for good things too, but I don't know how based on the one I saw recently, I practically would send money to myself over in some crazy country. I don't have any advice on how the world handles it, because I don't think we know how to handle what we did with the nuclear genie. But I do think, as someone who doesn't understand a damn thing about it, that it has enormous potential for good and enormous potential for harm, and I just don't know how that plays out.
Question 4 on Ajit Jain. Warren Buffett says Ajit Jain is irreplaceable. We won't find another Ajit.
Warren, you just said that you'd rather have Ajit running risk assessment at the insurance operations than any other 1,000 insurance adjusters in the world. So I'd like to follow up with a question that came in from Mark Blackley in Tulsa, Oklahoma. He said, Warren, for years you have spoken about the incredible impact Ajit has had on Berkshire. You've often joked, if you and Ajit are in a sinking boat and we can only save one of you, swim to Ajit. While we often discuss plans for the next CEO of Berkshire, little is mentioned on who will one day replace Ajit. How should we think about the future of the Berkshire insurance operations, given how challenging it may be to find another Ajit? And I'd like to hear Ajit's thoughts on this as well.
Well, I would say we won't find another Ajit, but fortunately he's a good bit younger than I am, so I hope you have to worry a little bit about me first before you start worrying about Ajit. We won't find another Ajit, but we have an operation that he has created, and that at least part of it is, there are certain parts of it that are almost impossible for competitors to imitate. And if I was in their shoes, I wouldn't try and imitate them. And so we've institutionalized some of our advantages, but Ajit is, his presence allowed us to do it, and he did it. But now we've created a structure that didn't exist when he came in 1986. Nothing close to it existed with us or with anybody else. And insurance is the most important business at Berkshire. Marketable securities are important, but they're not in the class exactly as our insurance business. And Ajit, we won't have the same business if Ajit isn't running it, but we'll have a very good business. And again, that's thanks to Ajit. I'd been in the business when he came in 1986. I first went to Geico in 1950. We first bought National Indemnity in 1957. And it was something that we'd made quite a bit of money in the stocks of insurance companies. But we needed an Ajit. Unfortunately, he came into the office on a Saturday, and he was tired of working at something where he really didn't. It just didn't challenge his intellect. And I said, well, we got a lot of challenges, so nobody's perfect. So you've never seen an insurance policy or owned an insurance stock, but here are the keys, and that's worked out very well.
Thank you very much, Warren. Thank you very much, everyone. But the fact of the matter is, nobody is irreplaceable, and we have Tim Cook here in the audience, I believe, who has proved that and has set an example for a lot of people who follow.
That's a great observation.
Now, having said that, I will also add that our board is conscious of the succession issue, not only at Warren's level, but also at my level. And every year they have me sitting in front of them, answering questions and having me share my ideas with them in terms of what would happen to the operations if I get hit by a truck. We go through the various operations we have. I review with them a short list of people I think ought to be candidates for replacing me. And in addition to that, I go a step further and identify a particular individual as the person I would hand over the keys to if something were to happen to me. Obviously, that could be subject to change, but we take this issue fairly seriously. And I think at the end of the day, as Tim Cook has proved to us, it'll be the biggest non-issue of the day. The Earth will still keep revolving around the axis.
Okay, well, we know what we know what we will do. We know it's a good answer, but we know it isn't. We won't have another Ajit.
Question 5 on One More Day with Charlie. Warren Buffett talks about Charlie affectionately and says they would have probably done the same thing.
Hi, my name is Andrew Nikas, and I'm wondering if you had one more day with Charlie, what would you do with him?
Well, it's kind of interesting because, in effect, I did have one more day. I mean, it wasn't a full day or anything, but he, we always lived in a way where we were happy with what we were doing every day. I mean, Charlie liked learning. He liked, as I mentioned in the movie, he liked a wide variety of things. So he was much broader than I was. But I didn't have any great desire to be as broad as he was, and he didn't have any great desire to be as narrow as I. But we had a lot of fun doing anything. And, we played golf together, we played tennis together, we did everything together. And this you may find kind of interesting. We had as much fun, perhaps even more to some extent, with things that failed, because then we really had to work our way out of them. And in a sense, there's more fun having somebody that's your partner in digging your way out of a foxhole than there is just sitting there and watching an idea that you got 10 years ago just continually produce more and more profit. So it wasn't, he really fooled me, though. He went to 99.9 years. I mean, if you had picked two guys, he publicly said he never did a day of exercise except where it was required when he was in the Army. So he never did a day of voluntary exercise. He never thought about what he ate. We started every day, and Charlie he was interested in more things than I was, but we never had any doubts about the other person, period. And so if I'd had another day with him, we'd probably have done the same thing we were doing the earlier days, and we wouldn't have wanted another. We only had one day. There's a great advantage in not knowing where you're going to, what day you're going to die. And Charlie always said, that just tell me where I'm going to die, so I'll never go there. Well, the truth is, he went everywhere with his mind, and therefore he was not only interested in the world at 99, but the world was interested in him. It's remarkable. I told him in the last few years, I'd never seen anybody that was peaking, at 99 and where the world wanted to come and see him. I mean, they actually wanted to go out to 351 North June Street. And whether it was, well, I could name a whole bunch of names, but just, I'll start with Elon Musk, but go down the list. And they all wanted to meet Charlie, and Charlie was happy to talk with them. And the only person I could think of otherwise was the Dalai Lama. I don't know that they had a lot else in common, but it was, he lived his life the way he wanted to, and he got to say what he wanted to say. He, like I, loved having a podium, and again, I can't remember any time that he was mad at me or I was mad at him. It just didn't happen. And calling him was fun back when long distance rates were high, and we didn't talk as often as in recent years. As we used to be on daily for long periods, and we did keep learning, and we liked learning together. But we tended to be a little smarter because as the years went by, because we had mistakes and we had other things where we learned something, and the fact that he and I were on the same wavelength in that respect meant that the world was still a very interesting place to us when he got to be 99 and I got to be 93. So I don't have a perfect answer for you there, but I can tell you the ingredients that would go into. Sometimes people would say to me or Charlie at one of these meetings, if you could only have lunch with one person that lived over the last 2,000 or so years, who would you want to have it with? Charlie says, I've already met all of them, because he read all the books. I mean, he eliminated all the trouble of going to restaurants to meet him or anything like that. He just went through a book, and he met Ben Franklin, and he was remarkable. He said he really had no one else to meet because he'd read all their stuff, and he liked Ben Franklin's stuff better than he liked mine. But with Ben Franklin, he just had to read about it. They didn't have to go have lunch with him or anything of the sort. But it's an interesting question. What you should probably ask yourself is that, who do you feel that you'd want to start spending the last day of your life with, and then figure out a way to start meeting them or tomorrow, and meet them as often as you can. Because why wait till the last day? And don't bother with the others.
Question 6 on Berkshire $182 billion cash. Warren Buffett says if things aren't attractive, he wouldn't move even if Treasury bills are at 5.4% or 1%.
This question's from Johan Halen, who writes, you're sitting on $168 billion of cash, which you told us today is now more than $182 billion. His questions are, 1, what is Buffett waiting for? And 2, why not at least deploy some of it?
Well, I think that's pretty easy to answer. I don't think anybody sitting at this table has any idea of how to use it effectively, and therefore we don't use it, and we don't use it now at 5.4%, but we wouldn't use it if it was at 1%. Don't tell the Federal Reserve that, but prefer it. But we only swing at pitches we like, and if anybody tried to swing at every pitch, or felt that because they hadn't swung at a pitch for the last 2 pitches, they ought to swing at the third one or something like that. There are times, and obviously, but I would say this: I would not like to be running $10 billion now. $10 million, I think Charlie or I could earn high returns on, because I think there are just a few things that happen on a very, very small scale. But if we had 10 billion, I wouldn't basically see many more opportunities than we found. Now, it's true that something like Japan we could have done if the company had a 30 or 40 billion, and we'd have had great returns on equity. But if I saw one of those now, I'd do it for Berkshire. It isn't like I'm got a hunger strike or something like that going on. It's just that things aren't attractive, and there's certain ways that can change, and we'll see whether they do.
Question 7 on thought process for exit positions. Warren Buffett's cryptical answer is he invests to hold forever.
Hello. My name is Stefan Uhrenbacher. I am a shareholder from Hamburg, Germany. I've been coming to Omaha since 2007. And I'm deeply grateful for all the things I could learn here, both about investing and about life, in particular creating circumstances that will enable me to lead a productive life during my entire healthy lifespan. So thank you for that. My question to Warren. Your favorite holding period is forever. Holding American Express or Coca-Cola for decades. Berkshire recently went in and out of Markel, and you, I believe, sold and later bought Oxy, which I think happens to everyone all the time. But can you maybe to us give examples of your thought process when you exit positions? Thank you.
Well, there are various reasons for exiting positions. One is if you need the money, but that doesn't happen very often with us. But it used to happen on every decision I made when I started, when I was 20 years old, which I considered the post-Graham period, although I actually started in 1942, if you just talk about buying stocks. But in any event, the decision process is really quite interesting in a certain way, because Charlie and I made decisions extremely fast, but in effect, after years of thinking about the parameters that would enable us to make the quick decision when it presented itself. And people have speculated on how I've decided to really put a lot of money into Apple. And for a reason, I can't. One thing that Charlie and I both learned a lot about was consumer behavior. That didn't mean we thought we could run a furniture store or anything else, but we did learn a lot when we bought a furniture chain in Baltimore, and we quickly really realized that it was a mistake. But having made that mistake made us smarter about actually thinking through what the capital allocation process would be and how people were likely to behave in the future with department stores and all kinds of things that we wouldn't have really focused on. So we learned something about consumer behavior from that. We didn't learn how to run a department store. Now, the next one was See's Candy, and See's Candy was also a study of consumer behavior. We didn't know how to make candy. There were all kinds of things we didn't know, but we've learned more about consumer behavior as we go along, and that sort of background, in a very general way, led up to the study of consumer behavior in terms of Apple's products. And in that case, while I watched what was happening at the Furniture Mart in terms of people leaving the store, even though we were selling Apple at a price where we weren't even making any money, but it was just so popular that if we didn't have it, people left the store and went to Best Buy or someplace. And if you know the Blumkins, they can't stand anybody leaving the store, so they behave accordingly. But then you learned that had to interest you in the brand. And then you had a million different inputs. But I think the psychologists call this apperceptive mass, but there is something that comes along that takes a whole bunch of observations that you've made and knowledge you have, and then crystallizes your thinking into action, big action in the case of Apple. And there actually is something which I don't mean to be mysterious, but I really can't talk about. But it was perfectly legal and everything, I assure you that. But it just happened to be something that entered the picture that took all the other observations, and I guess my mind reached what they call apperceptive mass, which I really don't know anything about. I know the phenomenon when I experience it, and that is we saw something that I felt was, well, enormously underpriced. Maybe I've used this example before, but if you talk to most people, if they have an iPhone and they have a second car, the second car costs them $30,000 or $35,000, and they were told that they never could have the iPhone again, or they could never have the second car again, they would give up the second car, but the second car cost them 20 times what the iPhone did. So now people don't think about their purchases that way, but I think about their behavior. And so we just decided without knowing, I don't know, have the faintest, there may be some little guy inside the iPhone or something. I have no idea how it works, but I also know I know what it means to people, and I know how they use it, and I think I know enough about consumer behavior to know that it's one of the great products, maybe the greatest product of all time, and the value it offers is incredible. And I think it has, in Tim Cook, I think it has somebody that, in his own way, is the equivalent of a partner with Steve Jobs, that could do one thing extraordinarily well, and more than one application. But one thing, and Tim was the perfect partner to serve sequentially with him. So it's you sort of know it when you see it. I actually saw it with Geico when I went there in 1950. I didn't know exactly what I was seeing, but Lorimer Davidson on a Saturday in 4 hours taught me enough about what I understood what auto insurance was, and I knew what a car was, and I knew what people went through people's minds. You know, I knew they didn't like to buy it, but I knew they couldn't drive without it. So that was pretty interesting. And then, but he filled in all the blanks in my mind as I sat there on that Saturday afternoon. And you know, every now and then it happens. You know, why do you have this? The person you met, you know, there are all these different potential spouses in the room, and then something happens that you decide that this is the one for you. You know, I think was it Rogers and Hammerstein that Some Enchanted Evening wrote about that. Well, our idea of an enchanted evening is to come up with a business, not Charlie and me, and there is an aspect of knowing a whole lot and having a whole lot of experiences, and then seeing something that turns on the light bulb. And that will continue to happen, and I hope it happens a few times to you, but you can't make it happen tomorrow, but you can prepare yourself for it happening tomorrow, and it will happen sometimes.
Question 8 on making 50% annual return with $1 million. Warren Buffett says it's doable with small sums like $1 million by reading Moody's equivalent and liking what you do.
Good afternoon, Mr. Buffett, Mr. Abel. My name is Sirapop Wu. a resident of New Zealand, but originally from Thailand. This is my first time in America and the first time attending the meeting. The journey was quite rough, but it was all worth it though, because I can now personally thank you, Mr. Buffett and the late Charlie Munger, well, he is still with us, for organizing such a wonderful event, and most importantly, for being such an exceptional role models and sharing your wisdom with us all these years. So thank you.
Well, thank you for coming.
So here's my question for you, Mr. Buffett. Towards the end of 2018, you mentioned that you guarantee you could make a 50% annual return if you had to start again with under $1 million. The question is, if tomorrow you woke up in the body of
your body.
20-year-old American.
Your body. But that's fine.
And your name was now Warren a la carte. And you had some money to invest on a full-time basis. What method or methods would you use to achieve that return? Would it involve flipping through 20,000 pages of Moody's manual or similar publications? Yep. Or finding, to find cigarettes? Or would it be hunting for great companies at a fair price as Mr. Munger would? Or would it be a combination of both, with opportunity cost serving as the final arbiter of which method to use, given that your investing opportunity has now broadened significantly? Thank you.
Good question. I'm glad you came. And the answer would be, in my particular case, it would be going through the 20,000 pages. And since we were talking about railroads, I went through the Moody's Transportation Manual a couple of times. That was 1,500 or 2,000 pages, or probably 1,500 pages. And I found all kinds of interesting things when I was 50 or when I was 20 or 21. And I don't imagine there's anybody here that knows about the Green Bay and Western Railroad Company, but there were hundreds and hundreds of railroad companies, and I like to read about every one of them. The Green Bay and Western, in those days, everybody had a nickname for railroads. I mean, that was just what Northern Pacific was, the Nipper, and the Phoebe Snow was one of them in the east that used to go up to Cornell, and the Green Bay and Western was known as grab baggage and walk, and GB&W, and they had a bond that was actually the common stock, and they had a common stock that was actually a bond. And, that could lead to unusual things. But they wouldn't lead to unusual things that would work for you with many millions of dollars. But if you collected a whole bunch of those, which I set out to do, and actually that's what impressed Charlie when I first met him, because I knew all the details of all these little companies on the West Coast that he thought I would never have heard of. But I knew about the Los Angeles Athletic Club or whatever it might be, and he thought he was the only one that knew about that, and that became an instant point of connection. So, to answer your question, I don't know what the equivalent of Moody's manuals or anything would be now, but I would try and know everything about everything small, and I would find something. And with $1 million, you could earn 50% a year. But you have to be in love with the subject. You can't just be in love with the money. You really got to just find it like essentially like, people find other things in other fields because they just love looking for it. A biologist looks for something because they want to find something. And that's built into I don't know how the human brain works that much, and I don't think anybody understands too well how the human brain works. But there's different people that just find it exciting to expand their knowledge in a given area. I know great bridge players. I know great chess players. Actually, Kasparov came to Omaha and met Mrs. B. I've had the luck of meeting a lot of people that are unbelievably smart in their own arena and do some unbelievably dumb things in other areas. So all I know is the human brain is complicated, and but it does its best when you find out what your brain is really suited for, and then you just pound the hell out of it from that point. And that's what I would be doing if I had a small amount of money and I wanted to make 50% a year. But I also wanted to just play the game. And you can't do it if you don't find the game of interest, whether it's bridge or whatever it may be, chess, or in this case, finding securities that are undervalued. But it sounds to me like you're on the right track. I mean, anybody that'll come all the way to this annual meeting has got something in their mind other than bridge or chess. So I'm glad you came, and come again next year.
Question 9 on choosing the right heroes. Warren Buffett says to choose the people that you want to be yourself.
Jeff Robelier from Tulsa, Oklahoma, and I'm thinking of Dr. Graham, Mr. Munger, your father, and my question is for all of us, but it's probably especially for the younger people in the room, the importance of picking the right heroes in life, choosing friends wisely, and maybe tell us a story, if you could, about each of those folks. Thank you, sir.
Well, there's no question you're 100% right in terms of having the right heroes. And, you're lucky if you get them. I mean, Charlie had them, I had them. And the interesting thing, my sister is here today, my younger sister with the 2 survivors, and we both experienced having the same hero, even though as we grew older, we saw that we didn't agree with plenty of his ideas, but we did agree with his values and motivation. And that's a better lesson than having somebody that's reading to you from a catechism that has got a lot of rules in it, which are pretty good rules, but there's a special place for somebody that is going to continue loving you, even if you break some of the rules. And that's what Charlie had in his life, was what Bernie and I had in our life. So I would just repeat what you said. I don't need to give you a bunch of, when I ran away from home, I'll give you a specific example with me. When I ran away from home and we hitchhiked up to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and got picked up by the state police and everything, and I talked these other 2 guys into it. And we lied like crazy to the state police, saying we had our parents' permission. Some kid at the place where we stayed had tipped them off that we'd run away from home, and we started, like I said, when the state police picked us up, we decided that 2 things, we decided to tell them a bunch of lies about the fact we had our parents' permission, and we decided we better get out of Hershey because these cops were going to find out sooner or later. And so anyway, we ended up back in Washington after a couple of days. And when I walked in the door, one of the boys' mother, and this other kid was the Congressman Roger Bell, and his mother was in the hospital over this whole thing. He'd taken out his cash in his savings bonds, and so she was sick, and Judge Bell, her husband, was all concerned and everything. And I walked in the door in Washington, and my mother said, "How come you came back so soon?" And my father said, he said, I know you can do better. And and I just paid more attention to my father than my mother. And so you want to have the right heroes, and you don't have to have them. It's not the heroes based on what they've accomplished, and it's the people that you want to be yourself. And if you copy the right people, you're off to a great start. And I don't mean a great start about making money. I mean a great start about living your life. So you can check with my sister Bertie, who's here, and see if I've told the story correctly. She ran away from home too, incidentally, but she didn't get as far as I got. she was running away to go over to my grandfather's house, which was about 2 miles away. But I don't want to denigrate her runaway abilities, because she is much more accomplished than I am in all kinds of other things. But when it comes to running away, I definitely upclassed her.
Question 10 on starting all over again. Warren Buffett says he doesn't believe there's any room in beating yourself over what's happened in the past. Most of all, he said, be kind.
Hello, my name is Dennis from Gifhorn, Germany. I'm my first time here. I'm here with my friend who would, by the way, love to invite you to dinner. You talked about the importance of heroes, and we are very happy to and thankful that we have you as our hero with great values, and thank you for that, first of all. My question is, it is clear that you achieved great success in life. Earlier you talked about every investment having opportunity cost. From what I've learned in life, that does not only apply to investing your money, but also to investing your time.
Right.
And every hour you spend in your office is an hour you cannot spend with your spouse or children. With the life experience you have now, if you had the possibility to start all over again, would you set your priorities any different? If yes, how and why? And what's the best way to invite you to dinner?
Well, that definitely won't be one of my priorities if I figure out how to do that. But that doesn't, don't take it personally, because when you can figure out at the maximum how long a period I've got. And, I don't think, I can figure out all kinds of things that should have been done differently, but so what? I'm not perfect. I don't believe in lots of self-criticism or being unrealistic about either what you are or what you've accomplished or what you'd like to do. You do a lot of things, and who knows whether somewhat different trade-offs, you just can't, you don't know what the past would have led. I don't think there's any room in beating up yourself over what's happened in the past. It's happened, and you get to live the rest of the life, and you don't know how long it's going to be, and trying to do the things that are important to you. And if I was a doctor, or if I was in all kinds of different professions, I might do different things, but I really enjoy managing money for people who trust me. I don't have any reason to do it for financial reasons. I'm not running a hedge fund or getting an override on or anything, but I just like the feeling of being trusted. Charlie felt the same way. That's a good way to feel in life, and it continues to be a good feeling. So I'm not really looking to change much. If I'm very lucky, I get to play it out for 6 or 7 years, and it could end tomorrow. But that's true of everybody, although the equation isn't exactly the same. But I don't believe in beating yourself up, though, over anything you've done in the past, and I don't believe in. Well, I believe in trying to find, what you're good at, what you enjoy, and then I think the one thing that you can aspire to be, and because this can be done by anybody, and it's amazing, doesn't have anything to do with money, but you can be kind. You can be kind if you're, and then the world's better off. I'm not sure that the world will be better off if I'm richer, but there's no question that, and kind people, and in the end aspire to be more, or I'm sure many of you are yourself, but just aspire to be more so.